right, so I'm going to take from Leland, because that second or third question he asked is an excellent one. Our relationship now with all the other countries in that region, now that Saudi King Abdullah is gone. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, there are two lessons from both of these events today. The first is that the Arab Spring was a disaster for the United States and for the region. Sure. Chaos is the worst possible thing that can happen anywhere for us and for everyone. And so that calls into question our strategy in, say, Syria, which is to undermine the Assad regime there. To what end? Because their human rights record isn't as good as that in Santa Monica. I mean, like, it's pointless and destabilizing. And the second lesson is domestic oil energy production, oil and gas in this country is more important than it ever has been.
It's also cheaper than it has been in a long time.
For the moment. But the administration has put roadblock after roadblock in the path of that, and why?
All right, so we heard Leland talking about, you know, and I mentioned it too, the nesting of terrorists there in al-Qaeda, but really one of the big focuses this morning isn't al-Qaeda at all. It's on Iran. Former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Liz Cheney had this to say. Watch.
With the collapse of the government in Yemen, got Iran basically in control of at least 4 capitals in the Middle East, of Sana'a, of Baghdad, of Damascus, and potentially Beirut.
Rachel, your thoughts?
Well, listen, I heard in the interview earlier that he mentioned, you know, the King Abdullah dying and what that impact is. I don't think there's a problem with him dying. That's been prepared. I mean, they've prepared for that. I think the biggest threat to Saudi Arabia is the administration negotiating with Iran without consulting them. And yes, there is great upheaval right now, and one has to ask, you know, is this just, you know, with his policies failing, is it just negligence and incompetence? Or is it intentional negligence? I mean, he said he wanted to transform the United States of America. We see the Middle East transforming before our eyes. It's unrecognizable from what it was 6 years ago.
You know, Kimberly, it's interesting because the new King Salman, he's 79 years old. He's, you know, obviously heading up a key U.S. ally. He has promised, to quote him, that he will not be changing wholeheartedly a lot of the policies. But as Rachel has just pointed out, they've kind of been a firewall with Iran. I mean, they've been part of that coalition, however, silently or publicly.
Right. You can't underestimate the importance of that relationship as a key ally, a strategic ally in that region. And this is really a tragedy, what's happened over there. The United States has really held this up. Yemen is, we're winning the war against terror. And now $340 million later that we sunk into it, what do we have to show for it? We will probably lose our base there that we've been able to fly Predators out of and Reapers to make key strikes against ACAP in the region. This is a very crucial time in terms of the U.S. foreign policy and our national security to try and get some control over the situation, because right now, what successes can we point to?
Well, and we better be careful not to lose something else. I mean, now we're thinking about our U.S. Embassy there. We've got those ships waiting off the coast in the Red Sea, being prepared for any sort of evacuation. So we know we have to protect the assets that
Can I just say, no wonder the GOP doesn't want to trust the negotiations that the White House is doing with Iran when this is their version of success.
Well, and this is a really unique position for the Saudis, right? Because we consider them to be an ally. However, they have this long history of anti-Western Wahhabism that they spend millions and millions of dollars to fund. And so Tucker brings up a great point here. While we have all this energy production here at home, the Saudi kingdom has been also flooding the market, which is responsible for a lot of these low oil prices. So now more than ever, when these transitions of power happened, Tucker's right. U.S. energy independence is now more critical than ever. And our relationship and how we deal with the Saudis is also important, because think about it. The Saudis are one of the UN member states that doesn't recognize the state of Israel. What is the White House saying today? We're not going to meet with Israel. I mean, the Middle East is burning. It is a mess. And at some point, we start to have to ask the question, whose side are we on?